This episode is brought to you by our friends at Attack, ATAC. Attack is an app for athletes because champions aren't born, they're made. Attack is a training app for athletes where you have access to mental, physical, nutritional, all sorts of help. It's like having a trainer in your pocket. It's like having a mentor in your pocket. The Attack app is something that all wrestlers should have access to. Download the Attack app. It's in the Apple Store. It's in the Google Play Store. Download Attack today. There's options. You can go on their social and you can go on their website. You can head over to their Start Engine investment campaign. If you want to invest in Attack, you can. So follow them on social, atac.app. We are back, Baschamania, episode 181, with the legend of the sport, Jake Herbert. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. I wish we would have waited 3 more episodes now, so I got to hit that 184.
I know somebody commented. I can't remember if like Roman Bravo Young was episode 133 or there was something where it lined up perfect with their weight, and they were like, every time you hit a weight, you should do somebody at that mark, and we're at 181, so we missed a lot of the weights, but we do still have some left. So this is an episode that's long overdue. I really want to curate this conversation around recent events. You have done so many episodes about your whole career. You've done a lot of interviews. There's a lot out there, so we'll talk about some of it, but a lot of this I want to tie to recent events and see how we can kind of pull value out for listeners. Growing the sport, as cliche as it is, I think it happens around conversations, awareness. So I'm excited for this conversation. For those maybe living under a rock, Jake's an NCAA champ, world silver medalist, Hodge Trophy winner, an absolute slew of accolades. One of the things, though, that I love the most, and I think anybody who knows him will vouch for as well, is the number of things you've tried to do to help the sport grow. I remember I was Jordan Burroughs' agent brought me involved back in 2013, I think it was, with the Save Olympic Wrestling movement. I remember being involved in that with you way back then. I remember you teaching these guys how to use Dropbox and Google Drive. I was looking through an old email yesterday. I was cracking up. But you have been involved on so many levels with trying to propel the sport forward. And one thing that I know you did a couple of years ago was base wrestling. And before we go too far, why don't you explain for people who haven't heard base wrestling what that is?
So it's just a wrestling system, right? It's systemized it. And that was the creation of me and Andy Rovats, partnered up that. And we basically just Frankenstein the best of the Russian wrestling system, right? Of what they use, because they have a system, right? Like, yep. Again, you go anywhere in Russia, you're going to have youth, high school, elite level, Olympic level. They have the same practice structure, right? Throughout the whole thing. You can't find 3 high schools that have the same practice structure within here. So we're all over the place, fragmented. So we just took the best of Russia, combined it with the best of USA gymnastics and their physical literacy component, and put that together for, and again, it's for wrestling clubs that want to grow. Right. And again, we base it on, increasing participation, increasing retention, increasing physical literacy, right? And increasing the wrestling knowledge. Because if you have more kids who are around the sport longer, who have better, who are better athletes, you're going to get more wins as a team and as a club. And you haven't even taught anything wrestling yet. Right. And then once they learn, then we systematize how they learn wrestling. So it was something that I trained on and found that the most improvement that I've made with it. And it's a lot of still what's happening, what the elite levels and the colleges are still are doing. Majority of them are kind of doing it, but it's just hard for them to put it on a piece of paper, put it in a booklet, or unload it, right? You have to spend like months there learning the systems. So we kind of just made it easier for people.
And what led you to starting that?
Well, it was just like, and again, it's even more now. I think the wrestlers that are my age, it's just seeing that the lowest level of wrestling in Russia, it's completely different. In Russia, Kale isn't coaching, Kale and Burnout and these guys are all coaching at the highest level, only coach the highest athletes. In Russia, it's almost flipped vertically, where you have the best coaches down working at the youth level. And you're starting to see that a little bit now with the clubs like, Askren Wrestling Academy, Young Guns, a Pinnacle, all these other little clubs that are coming up are having that success that are there. But those are still the exceptions, not the norm. The norm is, all right, we have an elementary school program. Hey, dads, anybody here ever wrestle? 6 hands go up, right? All right, great. You haven't wrestled in 15 years. You were 6 and 12, and you're going to coach how you remember wrestling back in 1985. So there wasn't any resource to sit there to help these programs or even the mindset around it, like grow and be better.
Yeah. And that's important too, because I was one of those guys who was 6 and 12. And if my kid starts wrestling and they do that, I might not even raise my hand, because there is a huge plague too with parents living through their kids, and they jump the gun on saying, I'm not qualified for this, but I want to. Do you also think that, part of what initiated this conversation was Bashada texting me as soon as people were talking last week about this whole medical forfeits crisis and people not wrestling. And he had said, like, Jake has hit this nail on the head 100 times with why you're seeing less competition. I mean, I talked about it with Kevin Dresser last week about the number of matches that All-Americans wrestle, and it's down like 30% or something, and it's like, the number of matches we're seeing is down. The number of medical forfeits is way up. Do you think this stems from overtraining and kids not growing up in the system the right way?
Yes, 100%. And let me just to put a button on the last point. Just because I have an Olympic, just because I'm an Olympian, right, and I have a world medal and all these national championships, doesn't necessarily make me a better coach than someone else. There are youth wrestling coaches who might not have wrestled past high school. Greg Herbert being an example at St. Ed's, right? I don't think he actually really, I don't know what his wrestling background is. I don't know if he ever actually competed, but he built that program, that history for it. So there are people out there that can be better coaches. Yeah. Than that. Just because I know the wrestling move and the skill doesn't necessarily make me a better coach in transitioning. So I want to make sure that that's stated and justified out there, right? Because nowadays you could run a whole wrestling practice through just YouTube videos and clips and things here. Yeah. It's amazing what the technology is doing. So and on to your question that you're talking about is yes. I mean, when you talk about burnout, you have 2 ways. You have mental burnout and fatigue, and you have physical burnout and fatigue. Right. And I look at that. If you look at this, right, you look at the wrestling hotbeds, Ohio is like notorious for this, of getting a 4-time high school state champion, and they just are burned out. They can't barely make it or finish through the college season. Right. They're peaking too soon. And the way that I put this, Justin, I wish they could see this. And let me draw it here on this board right here. Yeah. But essentially, we all have a bell curve of competition. Right. So this is competition. This is time. And what happens is everybody's bell curve is like this.
Got it.
Right? At some point, I start competing in wrestling. Maybe that's maybe that's as a 5-year-old, right? Yep. Or maybe this is as a 15-year-old. But you have everybody retires. Father Time is undefeated. I only have so many penetration steps in my knee before I have to get surgery before it breaks. I only have so many times I can pull on a single leg before my body breaks down, right? That happens. So what it is how do I maximize this top part, right? Because I mean, we could argue right now, right? Like Burroughs, Dake, like these guys are getting a little bit older. They're probably on this end of the bell curve. Yeah, definitely. But they're slowing down and doing it smarter to make this part really last. Yeah. Really last long. And everybody's is a little bit different, right? So it's that number of competition that comes in. And again, you talk about both sides. You have the physical aspect of it with, with the body breaking down and everything else. But then you have the mental fatigue too. That's where the weight cutting comes in, the anxiety of competing, of what it's going for too. So it really starts back with, what everybody should be asking these youth wrestlers is, what's their goal with wrestling? And are you familiar with the study from the book, The Talent Code, about musical instruments in children?
I don't think so, no, but I'm very curious on this.
Super fascinating, right? They basically took a bunch of 3rd graders and they said, they put them into 3 categories. They said, we're going to give you a musical instrument. And they said, are you going to play this musical instrument for the rest of the year, throughout high school, or for the rest of your life? And then they got put in those categories, right? Okay. So it's either like, right, am I going to wrestle just for the year? Am I going to do it throughout high school? Or am I going to look to make a career out of this or do this for a lifetime? There's 3 categories there. And then what they did is they put them into practice sessions. One group would practice, and they would judge them. Are you practicing 1 hour a week, 3 hours a week, or 5 hours plus a week? And here's what they found out from this mindset, from this. The ones that practice for 1 hour a week but were committed to playing the instrument for the rest of their life improved more than the ones who committed to playing just for the end of the year, but were practicing 5 hours a week.
That's crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. And that study can be related to everything else because of that mindset of how long am I going to do this for? So which goes back to, right, how much should I be competing? What should I be competing? What should I be doing? How do I get them involved? Yada, yada. Because you just don't know because every child is different. Every mind is different, right, of where that is. And again, the best one, I love it, is what happens if you drive a car, right? You get an awesome Ferrari out there and it's all souped up and you drive it, 250 miles an hour, 500 miles a day, every single day, right? What's going to happen to that car?
Engine's going to wear out. Tires going to wear out.
It's going to break down. So you got to have those seasonalities.
Yep.
On and off and up and down and in and out, right?
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because a lot of times, like, I wrestled in middle school and high school and I was no good. And there's a part of me that wants my kid to kind of be no good because of the aspect of I learned so much from the sport and never had to worry about the craziness you're seeing. And I'm curious, one of the ways I already know I want to frame this podcast is an Olympian's advice to parents of youth wrestlers. Because I see from having this podcast and being around the wrestling world for so long, I get a lot of Facebook friend requests and some of these people I see, and the stuff they're doing for their kids competing seems crazy. And I can't say nothing because I'm not in that position yet, but I'm curious for all of the parents listening of a youth wrestler, what would your advice be on not just necessarily, making decisions, but overall, would your advice be what you just said of figure out how long your kids want to wrestle? Or what's that approach like for you? If somebody were to say, like me, like my son's about to be 1, at some point he's going to want to start wrestling, I'm sure. And it's going to be me calling people like you and saying, hey, what's your thoughts on this? Should I limit this, that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So my, again, I worry on giving advice, but my suggestion would be to, one, engage your kid with it too, right? Like, one, they should have a choice in it too. And I understand my 4.5-year-old son, we were set to go to wrestling yesterday at 3. Again, this would have been his 4th practice lifetime, right?
Okay.
4th practice he ever went to. We found a youth wrestling program here in the area because I'm scouting to do it. It would have been his 4th one. He's 4.5, right? So it would have been his 4th one. When I came home, he's like, Dad, I don't want to go to wrestling. No problem. You know what we ended up doing? Freaking wrestling on the couch, right? Like right. That's what we ended up doing. So it's like I could have forced him, I could have dragged him and kind of been in there, but he's 4.5. So most of the kids don't even start till they're 6, right? That's the way the club is. They just, again, I brought him to a couple to kind of see it, right? So I would advise this as first easy entry into the sport. Bring them around, bring them to a match, have them watch it. Put on some YouTube videos, play around with them at the house, have friends come over, make it short because their attention span under 6 years old is that of like a gnat still, right? Yep. So it's got to be really easy and it's got to be fun. They got to make it a good time. And again, you got to judge this off your child's temperament. My son is, right, like just got the preschool call last week. My wife's so ashamed. My son's the one that is apparently tackling kids on the playground. Go figure, right? Like, go figure. Who
saw that coming?
Yeah, and you ask him, like, he played soccer for, introduction to soccer. And when I asked him, hey, what was your favorite part about soccer? It was, I love tackling the other people. I'm like, all right, you're probably not going to be a soccer player, right? Like, it's his temperament, right? That's not that's not who he is, and that's different. So know that, and then make your child. It's not just about you, right? It's if it is about you, and that is one thing that I would suggest every youth wrestling coach ask. Right, you give a survey to your parents as the kids are joined. Is what do you want your son or daughter to get out of wrestling? Right, what do you want them to get out of it this year and as a lifetime? And then what you can do is there's a difference of a dad being like, I want to be able to go to the bar and brag that my son's the toughest 8-year-old on the block. That's right. A very different person you're going to train because I'm going to teach him different moves and different things. If I know, hey, if I want him to be peaking to be a state champion at 8, that's a different training program and training path to be on versus I want him to be a state champion in high school or I want him to get a college scholarship.
Yeah.
So you're going to work. You're going to work with your kids on that as they go in and hear their feedback and get their results, right? And recognize at the end of the day, like, It's really, really hard to be super successful at something if they don't internally love it. Yep. Right? Like think about how many 4-time high school state champions that did it and they got through with it, and then they get to college and they go, I'm done. I'm burnt out. Or this isn't fun, or I cut so much weight, or I'm just mentally messed up with it. And then the relationship with the parents is fractured, because guess what? Your relationship with your son or daughter should last the rest of your life. It's there. Wrestling, it's not going to last. You're going to retire. Here I am at 37 years old, retired, right? Been out of it for what seems like forever now.
2016 was it, right?
Yeah.
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 I put out on Twitter last night if anybody had any questions. There was a couple. One I want to get to right now while we're still going. Jay Moss asked what to do for youth wrestlers who are putting in the effort but are not having success during competition and feeling down in the dumps.
Yeah. I mean, that happens, right? Like what it would be is, and again, if they are, and it's on temperament, right? There's something on, I call it the plus minus equal effect. And I may end up writing a book on this or not, and it's a pretty cool theory, but I needed 3 workout partners, right? When I was wrestling, I needed a plus. I needed somebody that could beat me, right? Rather I had to go up a weight class, down a weight class, across the country, whatever. I needed somebody to train with that could beat me, that could get the better of me. I needed somebody that was equal, that as I got better, they got better, so that we were pushing each other. If I wasn't there at my all, they were getting, and if they weren't there at their all, I was getting them, so we could grow together. And then I needed a negative. I needed somebody that I could beat on from time to time. So I was saying, if that's happening, you got to find them. They probably need to spend more time with the equals and the negatives at that point, especially if they're feeling down on themselves from it. They're putting the work, they're doing it. Take them to some easier tournaments, right? Go to other places, find younger, less experienced people, and let them get a couple wins to build up their confidence. That's a good thing. Now, I'm not saying do that all the time, because you need a combination of all 3. It's just right now, maybe it sounds like that kid might be getting 75 to 80% of the pluses and the equals, and it's really challenging. We got to get those wins in there too to keep them going.
Yeah, go beat up a JV kid.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or if you're a JV, go beat up a modified kid.
Yeah. And there's something to that, Justin. Like there's a lot to that, to being able to work and learn what you have and have that success with it. And I relate that to teaching, right? There's something very, very different. If you really want to master something, you really want to master a single leg, go teach it, right? Or you really want them to understand, have them teach it. I don't know how old this kid is. He could be 5, he could be 15, but have them go teach it. Like, it's unbelievable what you learn, right? When I got done and won my silver medal and I got back to my first practice, Sean Bourmet was running Overtime School of Wrestling. He goes, "Hey, we really need to work on that leg lace." I was like, "All right, great." He's like, "All right, show up at 6:30 at the gym and I'll see you there." I show up at 6:30. There's like 60 kids running around. I'm like, "Hey, I thought we were going to work on my leg lace." He's like, "Yeah, we are. Guys, bring it in. Jake, teach your leg lace." And I was like, "What?"
It's so funny you say that, because back probably about 5 years ago now, 5-6 years ago, I started taking up piano lessons and I got decently good. And my teacher, once I met my wife and we got married, she's like, "I would love to learn the piano." My piano teacher was like, "Great teacher, because I want you to take what I'm teaching you and now teach her on it and watch the way it hits you differently." It's crazy. So definitely great perspective. You know, you've mentioned a couple times now that you are retired and you did have so much success on every level. And I'm curious, now that you're done, looking back, what were your favorite memories or things that you did in the sport, competition wise?
It was just the travel. I mean, like, reflecting back, I was like, I got paid to be a professional athlete, right? Now, not enough to retire off of like an NBA player, but even most of those guys aren't making enough, right? If you play 3 or 5 years in the NFL, great, you walk away with 2 or 3 million. That's still not enough for it to be done for a lifetime.
Right.
It's a good head start, but like, I mean, just the gratitude of being able to compete at something I loved. I got to do what I love and chase down my dream, right? Of getting to the Olympics, right? Of winning a world medal, of representing the honor of representing the United States at the world, you know, in the Olympic stage. So I love that. And then the different things that it spun out, right? Getting to be in Foxcatcher for it, getting to be, we rang the opening bell at the stock market, right? Flying on private jets, the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. These are all this lifetime experiences, but I would definitely say that my favorite moment was hands down, it almost like tears me up in London. I had 68 people fly over to watch me to London. And it was like after weigh-ins, and I was walking down I'm gonna meet my parents, get a drink, and they were like there. But I just remember like everybody was like in one place gathered and just getting hug after hug after hug after hug, and just seeing these people from all walks of life. Like, I mean, from the youth, neighbors I knew as a little kid, all the way through people I just met in college or in Ann Arbor. And it was just like, man, that support was, it gets me like choked up just thinking about that, and just how grateful that was of seeing these other people support there.
I can't imagine how cool it was to represent America at the Olympics. Like, that seems like I forgot who said it, but a while ago, somebody had talked about business and the adrenaline behind success and wins, and, wins in business where you have a good deal, you sign a big client, you hit a big milestone, whatever it is. And that can become very addicting to chase, right? Like, you get your biggest client ever, you want to one up it. You make the most money ever, you want to make more. For you, when you've had those highs in adrenaline in the sport, how do you combat that now in your professional life outside of wrestling? You've had a certain level of, like, you talk about the moments in London at the Olympics. Like, how do you now take that and kind of measure it against the things you're doing in your professional life?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that's something that I struggled with for a while. Is I think it was moving on my identity, right? Which is really funny. Like, you ask my kids and my wife, they're like, yeah, Jake wrestled. I'm not just a wrestler, right? Like I tie more to my identity to being just a wrestler. That was just one thing, right? Like, great. That was one aspect of life that I crushed it in. And I want to continue to level up and do that in every aspect of life, because I'm more than just a wrestler. And it can be challenging, really, really challenging at times to be able to transition that off the mat into business, which I did a whole course on, and I love helping athletes transition over, right? I create, and I'm actually doing a younger mastermind in the creation right now for like youth wrestlers. It's called like, not youth wrestlers, but like that age of eighth grade to high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beyond the mat. Right. Because great, if they're a 4-time state champion and they're an asshole, that's right. I failed as a coach. I'd rather have a 2-time state champion that's a great human being, right? Like a Miles Amin. Like, I can't say enough. That kid legitimately helps old women across the street. He'll legitimately put back the grocery carts. He'll legitimately like help people out, like out of his way. He's a great student and an even better person. He's somebody that like I want my daughters dating somebody like that. Right. When they grow up. And that's more important than him winning that national title, winning that gold medal on that thing too. So it's by transitioning this over and competing that success, you have to look at it as it's a whole new realm, right? It's a whole new thing. I get to restart over and get to have that success in business, in life, and those other things too. Right. And if I just compared it to who I was, well, comparison is the thief of joy. Right. Mm-hmm. So I benchmark it to say, great, I was here in this area and I want to get over there, but recognize, right? Back to this guy, recognize that, and this is the most important graph, and it's the same thing. This is success. Let's see if you guys see it. This is success. This is time. And what people think it's like that, completely linear, right? But what it's really like, it's like a reverse hockey stick for those who are listening. And what happens is we put 5 years into something and we think we should be up here, but we're really down here. And this is the gap that makes people quit, because they haven't seen the success yet. Where if you keep going, it took me 16, 17 years to win my first national title, right? I think I won my first university national title, like legit national title, third at Fargo, right? First national title at like 19 there at universities in 2006. And then from 2006 through 2015, when I retired, I had 9 national titles. Just like in business, it took me X amount of years to make my first million. And then then it starts going exponential. And you've seen this too with your growth. Yep. And what you do in your business. So it's just recognizing that, hey, if I want to get better at everything, it's not really hard. It's just time consuming.
Yeah. And one thing I love about you is that you've not only had success in wrestling, but you've had success outside of wrestling. You've been involved in a ton of different business ventures, and anybody who follows you on social can see from, real estate to coaching to the podcast, you're involved with so many different things. And I'm curious, somebody like me, I had no success in wrestling. I own that. But what I've learned in wrestling did lead to so much success outside of wrestling. And I've tried to encourage people who are wrestling, whether they're good or not, and a lot of them are good, but it's like, don't overlook the process of what you're going through right now. Because even though your focus right now, if we're talking about a college kid and his focus right now is winning NCAAs in March, might not win it, might not even get on the podium. But what happens over the next couple of months may help him in 10 years in a business he's going to start or some other aspect in life. I think wrestling makes you a better entrepreneur, father, husband. I think the discipline, it's like there's times where I hear people talking about, they don't want to take the garbage out. It's so cold. It's like you go through a couple hours of wrestling practice, this, that. And it's like, who cares about suffering for 3 minutes in the brutal cold? My question is, what would your encouragement or advice be to those who are competing right now? And there's always people who are like, I love how you positioned it earlier where, you do got to ask yourself, what do you want out of the next year, 5 years, lifetime, whatever it may be. But for those people who are either maybe on the fence or just kind of going along for their ride, how would you encourage them to embrace that time of competition right now that I'm sure if you could go back and do it all again, you would? And I'm sure it's not just, Saturday nights in March. I'm sure it's so many more things that go along with it. What would your wisdom be for those that are still competing to take what they're going through now and to not kind of let it go by without really embracing that process?
That's a great question. So, right. And this is, I've done this with a lot of like business entrepreneurs and I've helped coach is they sit down and you got to define like what success is. It's different for everybody. It might be making the team, right? Getting off JV, making the team might be success. Getting a win might be success. Scoring a point it's different, right? My definition of success in life, I know I'm successful when people are telling me that my kids, my grandkids are good human beings and have the same core values. Not the same exactly, but about 80 to 90% of the same core values that I was able to transfer down to my kids that transferred into them.
Yep.
So that's how I'm defining success in life, right? So one, you need to figure out what success is to you. And then two, they talk about, hey, on my deathbed, the biggest thing that biggest fear you can meet is meeting the person you could have been, right? Or having these ghosts or these regrets. I want to die with as little regrets as possible.
Yeah, me too.
So what I say to that is, what I encourage you guys to do is, what is the fear? What was holding back from going all in? Right? Like, what is the fear? I've never met one person that was standing there on the Olympic stage that got there, right? When Jordan Burroughs is sitting there looking at his gold medal, they're not looking at it and being like, you know what? I really overtrained for this. I probably could have done a little bit less like bleacher runs, or I could have done a little bit more here. They don't think that way. You went all in. Where you do regret it is if you go, man, I missed that opportunity because I didn't give it my all, whatever your all may be. Right. And that's, like you said, wrestling makes you better, fill in the blank. It makes you a better father, makes you a better husband. And wrestling makes you better at anything in life. And because so few people are willing to do it, especially in these days, right? And what I call, we're living in the pussification of America era, right? Yeah. Like we need wrestling. You need to go through that. Your kids need to go through and experience it to whatever that time period might be, because it's going to help them. Because what you do in 1 week of a wrestling practice in general is more and harder than what every other kid in that school will do throughout the rest of the year. Like, so that's it. So it's, I would say, burn the boats and go all in. You're not going to regret it, right? Because when you go all in something, right, you had to do it with your web development, web page. Like, you went all in, right? You weren't doing half and half. You burned the boats and you went all in. Anybody that's been successful goes all in, right? And I don't think many people here are sitting there being like, oh, Jake wasn't a success in wrestling. I went all in for the Olympics and I went all in for the Worlds and went all in throughout my career and put everything into it. Now I came up short. I'm a world silver medalist and Olympian. I never got my Olympic gold. I didn't get my world championship, but I'm okay with it. I'm not losing sleep over that. And I'm able to transition that into other aspects of life, because the only way that you can compete against somebody who goes all out is you have to become that person who goes all out. Yeah. That's the only way. So that's
funny too, because like my entire 20s, all I did was spend time building my company and figure I'll get married in my 30s, have kids in my 30s, all these things. And I don't look back and regret a minute of my 20s from the time I put in If anything, it was like, what if I did a little bit more, you know? But you bring up an interesting point, actually parlayed in the next question, perfectly bringing up the world and Olympic losses, because you recently posted about taking your kids to the Powerade. And in the caption, you had said that you don't win silver, you lose gold. And as someone who's won both gold, you've won NCAA championships, conference championships, Hodge trophies, like you've won gold. You've also won silver, world medal, other stuff. How do you contrast the two experiences looking back?
It's a great question, right? So it comes back to the conversation I had with Bill Zadek, right? Bill Zadek, and it's really funny when you start looking at this like comparative and success, because he told me like once like that he was like, man, I'm kind of jealous of you. You made an Olympic team. Like, Bill never made the Olympic team, right? And I'm like, Bill, I'm a little jealous of you. You have a world championship. I don't, you know. So like, which is better? You know, in his mind, he thinks it's me. In my mind, I think it's him. In his career, so it's weird to think about that. But throughout that conversation, he ended up telling me something awesome. He goes, Jake, you know what the worst part about being a world champion is? I was like, oh, what? Contract endorsement, girls all over you. Like, what, Bill? What's the worst part from being a world champion, you know? And he looked at me dead serious and he said, not being a two-time world champion. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa. And that hit me, right? That really hit me, because when I looked at my match against Ben Askren as a sophomore, undefeated all the way into the national finals, and then losing, I literally those 50 minutes, that hour, 2 hours after that match, I was so pissed off. I was like, this season was for nothing. This is stupid. It was a waste of time. But I didn't come out here to be silver. I ended up doing that, and it sucked. And at sometimes when things happen, you don't get what you want. That's life, right? You got to sit in that shit. You got to sit in that and stew and let it feel and fester. And I was able to take that and bottle it. And because of that match, that is what propelled me to then go on and not get taken down or beaten again. Right. And you can argue, I think I got taken down once, but I ended up teching the guy. So I don't know if that like actually like counts as a takedown.
No, I don't think it does.
but like I had a pretty good career after that because of that match and what I learned in that match. Right. Lessons are caught, not taught. So you have to experience those downs and those lows to get through with that. So and then being able to look at those filters of both sides. Right up here on my board, it says, be grateful, but not satisfied, right? I want to continue to live and be super blessed and grateful for what I have, but know that, hey, I'm always striving to do a little bit more and to make that little bit of progress, but I got to give myself grace on how and what I do, right? Like I'm hard on myself because I haven't achieved the business success that I want, but I've only been in business for, 6 years now. Yeah. But I what's insane is 95% of the world. Yeah. 95% of the world would love the success that I've had so far.
Yeah.
So I think it's just having that introspective and really taking that time to learn about yourself and surrounding yourself with other people that'll give you grace too.
Yeah, which leads me to my next topic. And I do want to say before you say that, I'm very quick to call myself a success because I've labeled what success is to me, which is freedom and being able to run my company from my house. And my little 11-month-old comes and knocks on my glass office door and I can walk up and see him. Like, that's success. So when I call myself a success, it's not X amount of money. It's not this, and that. It's my view of a quality of life. But you mentioned people around you. And, one thing I love doing before somebody comes on here is I think if they're active on social, you can really pull some neat stuff out. And you're no exception to this. And you talked recently about, I think you were in St. Louis, and you talked about getting together with a tribe of like-minded men. And you had talked about, after retiring from wrestling and not having that wrestling room bond, which I miss. If you ask me what's the number one thing, especially being somebody who's never any good, it was we practice at 3, that 40 minutes from 2:20 when school ended at 2:15 to 3 o'clock when practice started, the greatest 40 minutes on earth. It is nothing else that you can replicate. And that fellowship is amazing. So I'm curious, what led you to that philosophy of, man, because I didn't really think about it that way until you positioned it that way, which is like find a tribe of like-minded people. And I actually just reached out to a good friend of mine. He's the assistant pastor of the church I go to. And I said, I'm like, dude, we need a fellowship. and he was a wrestler, good one. Actually, beat me in the finals of every tournament in a JV season. But I said we need to get like a fellowship of Christian entrepreneurs, because I think it's such a camaraderie where you need to be in the trenches with like-minded people. And entrepreneurs it's a different world out there when you're an entrepreneur, and there's a lot of different opinions. So I love that. What led you to that of trying to find that tribe like-minded men?
Right. So exactly what you said is that those are magical times, right? Like my whole life, it's so weird. 3:00, right? Most people get like, they're ready for nap. 3:00, I'm trained to go, right? Like
right.
high school, college, post-college, like that's what, I don't know how many years of my life that is now. I'm so old, but that was a lot of years, from 31 to, from 13 to 31, like 3:00, let's go. Like somewhere in that time period, right? That 2 to 5, like we're going. And I just so conditioned to that. So, but like, and again, what was great is I was going in the room and surrounding myself, and every room got better and better and better, right? Like being in the Cliff Keen Wrestling Club, being at being at the Northwestern high school room, it was great. I had great people in high school, and then to college, and then the regional clubs, and the Olympic training team, and everything else. I was going in the room with guys that wanted to be the best in the world. And when 2016 happened, when I stepped away and I retired from the sport, because there's two paths, right? Either you're going to get in and do coaching, or you're going to leave, right? And that was hard. So when I left, I attempted to build it in and around where I was at in my area, to find people, and I'm outgoing and I'm extroverted, so I was able to find people. It wasn't like anything like consistent. So that's when I kind of found the Dad's Edge Mastermind. Right. And again, I own businesses. And again, I had mentors that were like great in one area, like, great, this guy is awesome, I'll take business advice from him, but his relationship with his kids and his wife is crap. And then this guy is like such a great dad, right? But he makes zero money. Right. And this guy has his health in order, right? Which is great. And he's super healthy in there, but he can't do anything for business. And he's like, so like, I wanted to find people that were having it all going on. And that's what it was when you're wrestling. These guys that I'm hanging with Kyle Dake and Jordan Burroughs and Kyle Snyder, they got it in every aspect. They're leveling up in every single aspect of their life, and it's spilled over right into that too. So I just recognized that that's what it was missing, that I was out on my own trying it for 1 or 2 years, and it was out missing. And there's so many, that's what's great about the connectivity, right? The phone, the things they have now, that there's that resource out there. And now, like, half my working time is I get to lead a mastermind that I was a part of. After 3 years of being it, I was a part of it. They asked me to come over on the other side. So my 3 coaches and guys that were there, and it's the mastermind. We say that none of us is smarter than all of us. And we got the jump over, and they asked me to become the 4th member, and we're up to 50 men who are business owners, right? And it's great because it's my core values. What's important to me, right? Well, it's God, it's family, and then it's business. So these are men that have done amazing things. I mean, we have some men that are making $150,000, $200,000 a month in here, and they want to focus on how are we being, how do we lead ourselves? How are we making sure that our cup is full, so that instead of just having 10 ounces of water where I can only give a little bit to everybody to drink, I can have a freaking gallon jug like this? How do I make sure my cup is growing and it's filled so there's things in there? And then how do I deepen my connection, with my wife, with my queen, that has built this family around her, that she's good, that I'm good, that we're on the same page, that we're connecting, that we're still dating, that we're still falling in love? And then how do we deepen our relationship and our connection with our children? Right? So that they're seeing and living this value while continuing to grow and scale our businesses. And that was hard to find. That was out there, but I got lucky running into a niche of like-minded guys. And that's my new tribe. And those are the guys that I ride and die with now, and that I'm there with, that I can trust my kids to be around. They're the people that you don't get to pick your neighbors, right? Like you do and you don't, but like those are the people that I want my kids being around, that I want to send them down to this guy, that they can learn this skill and hang out with these kids, that they're having real conversations about building business, not about like bull crap and this and that and judgmental things. I want those high level conversations. That makes sense.
It's so funny you say that, because I like at family events and this and that, when people are just talking about, a movie from 10 years ago. I love movies. I love movie quotes, but like at some point it's like, you want to focus on real stuff. Like on Sunday, I'm eager for Monday. I'm curious too. This is a random question, but you mentioned all the technology devices we have now. Have you thought about how you would have leveraged NIL if it was around when you were competing?
Oh yeah. And I could take it two ways. I was just on the cusp of where that is. I mean, I had a big personality, it was big in there. So look at it as like, I'm like the Dan Severn of the UFC, right? Dan Severn missed out on all that good stuff, right? And where it's at now, which is great where it's at. But I mean, again, right? It is what it is. I'm okay. I was able to get business and work a little harder for it. And I feel like it probably would have been different if that stuff was given to me. I don't know if I'd be where I was at if I could have leveraged that stuff a little bit better. Cause I was able to get, I mean, I was up to making almost six figures, right? As a competitive wrestler, right? Back in 2000, 11, 12, 13, right? Like that wasn't happening that often, right? There are the exceptions, but like now it's insane. The money that is poured in, it's great for it. But yeah, I would have loved to leverage it because, and I think I still could, right? Which that gives me the mind is like, well, I still can, right? What's stopping me from doing it now? Right? Nothing. Like I still, if I wanted to go out and get things, and that's where I'm kind of done. But I just basically invest in those businesses or I'm partnered up with them in some ways, which is great.
And you mentioned, you've been in real estate, you've been in the Dad's Edge, you've got a lot going on. What would you say is your number one focus, or is there a main area right now that you're focusing?
Yeah. So right now, our main focus, and I actually have it written above in my 2023 focuses. So I have mental health, physical health, marriage, kids, and career. So those are the 5 areas that we're focusing on. And my wife and I are welcoming our 4th child.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, here in February. So one of our main focus is just get used to that routine of life with a family of 6. Right.
Yeah, like we got our 2nd coming in April. So I can't imagine the 4th coming.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's just life changing. So like and again, it goes to the thing. It's myself and my faith, right? How am I showing up and how am I leading? And you have to start it because I put my auction mask on first before I help and assist other people. So that happens every day. So that's a big focus of myself. And then it stems into my family, right? What am I doing for my family? How am I showing up? How am I supporting them? Where am I there? Where do they need me? They need me physically. Do they need me mentally? They need me to produce more. What do we need as a family to do that? And then what's left over can spill into community, right? Because again, if you're not making enough money, and again, money's a tool, right? It's good or bad. It's a tool and it's energy and it's limitless. That's the mindset I choose to have around it. It's limitless. It's abundant. It's out there. It's just figuring out ways and people to go get it. Cause I can go make a bunch of money, but I'm not willing to do it at doing something I don't like and with people I don't want to be around. So I'm asking, well, not not how do I have a good body and be with my kids, right? Or sorry, have a good body and work out with my kids. And I'm asking myself, how do I have both?
Yeah.
How do I have it all, right? How might I set up my life so that I'm in great shape physically, that I'm surrounded by great people, that I'm doing work that brings me alive, that I'm bringing the income that's needed to do there and showing up how I needed to be. So my focus is always all of it, but it is always broken down to different sections because it's just about balancing. Right?
How much of that career focus is wrestling right now, or wrestling related coaching? And you've been involved in so many wrestling ventures, Double Leg Ninja, the base wrestling system, all these things. How much of your career focus is wrestling versus non-wrestling?
Really down right now. It's probably less than 5%. And where it is I'm recognized because having a 4.5-year-old, I know I'm starting to get pulled in. I had to step away, right, to get the things that I wanted to get to. I had to step away from the wrestling world and go back so that I can build my businesses. Yep. So I could work to get the income in so that I could come back in, right? I still have this goal and this mission. I want to be the first Olympian to ever be the United States team leader, right? And I know I can do that, because what do you got to do? You got to give like about, I think it's like $500,000 a year, right, over a 4-year cycle. So it's like $2 million I got to get ready to give. Dang. To be in that position, something like that. I don't know what the exact things are, but it's probably something. So maybe it's more, maybe it's less. I don't know. So I had to step away to really leverage on what do I do in business. And now with my son being 4.5, right, I'm starting to be like get pulled back in. And I transitioned it. So instead of wrestling, I kind of did a lot more grappling, right? So it's more jujitsu, working with jujitsu schools. I have like a jujitsu clinic coming up. I still did a wrestling clinic last week. I'll still do those bits and pieces, but now I'm like, how do I do those? It's not for the funding and the money. It's gotta be one worth my time and it's gotta be the people I want to be around. And then how do I bring my family along with it? Mm-hmm. Right. So like next week when I'm doing my jiu-jitsu clinic, I'll bring my whole family up. They're going to all be there in the room and we're going to stay at my buddy's house and it's his school and it's a good relationship. So I want to make sure that it's hitting all the boxes, right? That it's a hell yes for the things that I want to go and do.
Yeah, that's so important. And being able to bring your family around things is one of those areas that I look at life as a success, that you can do that you can bring your family along. Couple random questions here before I let you go, because your buddy Andy, of course, had to ask a question when I put it out on Twitter. He asked, in your prime, which historical wrestler would you have wanted to compete against and why?
Yeah, Buvesa Satiev.
That was quick. That was right at the top of your mind.
One of the best of all time, right? Yep. At my weight class, around my weight class, right? Close enough. That was there. Like he's who I want to. I want to know where I'm at. You know, I want to go against the best to see where I'm at, whether I beat him or not. But man, I would have loved to go on and competed against him.
Is the obvious answer, because I want to parlay that into, if you were in your prime right now, who would you want to wrestle right now? I'm guessing the answer is David Taylor or Yazdani. Really?
Yeah. Well, Sajalayev. Yeah, Sajalayev. And again, and I say it because I've wrestled David Taylor. So that's the thing. Like immediately when you say the best to compete, I'd say Kale, but I've wrestled Kale.
Yeah.
So it's got to be like somebody I haven't gone against, right? And I've been in the room with David Taylor. I competed with him. Yeah, right now it'd be David Taylor or Yazdani because they're at my weight at my spot if I'm in my prime, right? And that's always the fun things is how do you go prime versus prime?
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh man, that would be great. There. So yeah.
It'd be funny if you did like a mock preview of like a 2012 team or 2013 team versus a 2023 team, and you went with guys in their prime. I know Flow Wrestling does that and other people do it. It's always fun.
Yeah, Shane Sparks got me on that because he did that with like me versus Ed Ruth in college. And I was like, dude, that already played out and happened. How are you having him beat me? Get out of here, right? Like
yeah, but he's a big Chicago guy. So maybe it's, not trying to give the bias to, you. I don't know. There was something else I was going to ask you about. Maybe we already talked about it. Yeah, it's fascinating, Jake. I love watching your career now because I personally love being involved with people who had a lot of success in wrestling and now they're having success outside of it. Because to me, people in business, people in the entrepreneur world who have wrestled, it's always a unique. There's a lot of success in that when you see a wrestler who has had success on the mat, or even like me, had no success on the mat, but now off the mat carrying those things in. So it's cool to see you doing all those things. Last thing here, if people want to engage with you, I love your Instagram bio, engage with me, become a better person. If people want to engage with you, how can you help people? What can you do?
Yeah. So awesome question. So I am getting ready. I hope that I'm ready this summer to launch, but I really want to get that mentorship going. It's something that I've recognized that I've lost for like 8th grade through 12th grade, like young men, right? That's like the group that I want to do. And I want to take it as beyond the mat, right? How do I take what they're doing in wrestling and prepare them so that they're going to have success in college and then therefore after in life? So around learning physical literacy, how their mind works, right? What are they doing physically? Their diet.
Please teach them financial literacy.
That's the second one. Oof. Physical literacy, financial literacy, emotional literacy, how our emotions work and everything else. And then spiritual too. And that's the way that I look at it too, because none of this stuff is taught in schools.
I know.
None of this is in there. And something that you can Google for later is Matt Boardwall and Action Academy. It is, man, like I look at my life and how blessed I am is I've gotten to learn the physical literacy for the first 31 years of my life. Because being wrestling and training, how to get and that goes with mindset too. So it's just not just physically, but mentally. So I got all that physical and mental literacy to a level that is beyond where other people would ever like dream of going. Right. And again, I could go more. There are people that are at higher levels, but I got to a very high level of that. So then I spent the next years learning financial literacy. The path of money. How does money work? How does it work? How do I, what's an asset? What's a liability? How do I invest in things? How do I invest in businesses? How do I invest in people? How do you do this? And then you go to the emotional side. Well, how are my emotions work? How come I'm yelling at my kid and I'm super upset? Why do I interact in this thing? Why does this trigger me? Why does that happen? How do I behave? What tools can I use to change it? And these are things that are never taught in school.
Yep.
But these are big things for these people to have success, because once you have a kid, if I have a 15-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid that understands how money works, that can understand how to keep themselves healthy physically and mental, and that understands their emotional control and how to talk to people, man, and that's not done anywhere. So that's through mentorship. So my intention is to launch that this summer and make it an 8-week course. Right for the kids, and get on and then see where it goes from there. Right. Maybe it grows into something bigger and longer. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But that's the big thing. And then the other thing is too, if you're a father who's a business owner, coming to dad's age, like that's the thing. Like one of my life missions was that I want to leave the people that I love, right, and interact with, the places that I go, and the things that I do. I want to leave them better than I found them.
Yep.
Right, for the most part. And I'm not perfect at it, but that's it. So if you're going to engage with me, I'm going to force you to level up, right? Whether you like it or not, in different areas. And you're going to do the same for me. I'm going to sit there, right? Like look at this conversation. We both got a ton out of this, right? Like I'm taking away a lot of things from what you have and what you did. And I know you're taking a lot of things away from me, which is great too. And it's going to level up. So I want to continue to engage with higher level people that are thinking of that, right? That are in those positions that can do things, because that's how we ultimately change the world. So yeah, just my email is jake.herbert1@gmail.com. You can shoot me messages on Instagram or whatever. On Facebook, I get back to those things there. And that's like kind of like this year is how do I get more organized about funneling people in there?
It's funny. We were talking about numbers, podcast numbers and this and that before. And I knew kind of why you're asking and stuff, but like a lot of people, when they ask me, because they're thinking about maybe starting a podcast, I always tell them that one of the reasons I started this podcast was, number one, to bring conversations that I'm grateful to have behind the scenes to the surface. Yeah. I might run into you at NCAAs, have a great conversation and wish other people could hear it. The other aspect is it is a great excuse to have a 30, 60-minute conversation that probably is very hard to fit in conversation. If I just texted every single person I've had on the podcast and say, hey, you have 60 minutes to just talk today. Like, I want to pick your brain, this and that. Like, I'm not the guy to do that. But if I can do that and we can do that and bring it to people, like if nobody listened to this podcast, I wouldn't regret doing it. I'd do it again. I'd have a follow-up. So I appreciate you taking the time, because I'm the same way, man. I'm grateful to, I'm pretty selfish that I'm trying to absorb stuff as guests come on here that have had success, and it's like absorb as much as you can. But I know you're bringing value and entertainment to many people listening, so thank you. Well, we'll definitely have to do this again. Are you following like college wrestling a lot right now?
Not as much as I need to. I got my Big Ten tickets. I got my house from there. I actually have a whole house, and I don't even know like who's going to be in there yet. So maybe it's like I got rented an Airbnb. I got early with things. I'm like, here it's in Ann Arbor. Like I have my baby coming February like 9th or 10th ish, right? Somewhere around there. Yeah. So my wife is now mother of 4, and then now Big Tens are March 5th and 6th. And the only reason why I got the go ahead, because it's also on my birthday. So now, and it's only a way. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to leave on a Saturday, go down, enjoy it, stay the night down there Saturday night, watch the finals, drive home Sunday. Right. Yeah. I'm like, babe, you can do this. You got 36 hours. I need to bring people in. What do I need to do? So I got like I just bought my 2 tickets just to get reserved. I have like a house, but I don't know who the heck I'm going with yet. I'm like pulling out all my friends from all over. I'm like, hey, are you going to fly in for this? Are you going to kind of like, I have it all set up just in case. Yeah. And I have no idea what will end up happening for it. So
it's funny. It's funny being in that, like I'm in kind of an awkward middle stage where it's like, so my son's 11 months old. We're having baby number 2 at the end of April. And it's like, I'm in that awkward time where it's like, I left NCAAs early because I missed my son so much. Like he was 2 months old. Yeah. And I literally left with like 3 matches to go, because it was either catch that late flight or like Sunday afternoon. So now this year's a tough year because like he's kind of too young to bring, but I also don't really want to miss going to NCAA. So it's like, I can't wait for a couple more years from now when he's like your son's age. And it's like, all right, let's go. You're going to go with daddy. We're going to NCAAs.
Dude, and it is a blast. I took Michael down to the session because we were here in Detroit last year, which was great. So I remember taking him the whole session, and I misread it. So we got down there an hour early. We walked around, got like a picture of him in front of like the Hodge Trophy and all this stuff. And it was so funny. Got him a big thing of popcorn. And as soon as the lights went on, he was like, oh, this is so good. I took him down, got to like walk on the floor, see the people. And as soon as the session started, he turns to me and goes, hey, I'm ready to go home. You know, and I'm like, out of here. Like, it couldn't have been timed any better. And I'm like, no. So he's like having like my friends in the background, like wrestling them, like in the background, like running around like a maniac, just being a kid, not paying attention. But it was like, you know, that was early 4, or maybe he was like 3.5 at that point.
Yeah, that's funny.
I know what you mean. And Justin, I struggle with that too, because I wanted to be the dad that was there every morning to see them when they get up, and then there every night when they get to bed. And now what I've realized as I've gotten older and older is it's really selfish because it's about me, right? If I'm showing up to help my wife, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But it's a different thing. What's really funny is I used to get up at like, 5 a.m., get my workout in. And I'd be like, oh, I got like, I don't have a meeting until 9:30. It's 8 o'clock. I'll just stop at home half an hour before the kids, get off or do something and say what's up. And I'd come home. It'd be chaos. I got to the point my wife would be like, stop coming home. It's weird with parenting. It was easier if it's just one of us, right? If mom's gone, they have no other option. It's just dad's putting down the bed. They have no other choice. They do it. But when then they'll start to play off of you and put things in and act up. So like at times I've started recognizing that, right? Like, all right, I don't need to be there every single night. And it's not purposeful or intentional. If I'm just doing it for me, that's one thing. If I'm doing it to help with my wife, it's another thing. But because it's just me, like, all right, it's the occasion. The occasion is I'm gone for a weekend, or I miss a night, or I'm away for work. It's not the norm. I'm not traveling 6 to 10 days a week. So it's that group really helped me with that mindset and talk through it and hear what other entrepreneurs, because now I'm on like kid number 4, and it's just so funny. Like your preparation for kid 1 of what you got to get ready compared to number 2. And then now go to like 3 and 4. I'm like,
right. Yeah, it's crazy, man. And you do have to be purposeful with stuff. Like my son loves brushing his teeth when I brush mine. He doesn't really brush his teeth. He just sticks his toothbrush in his mouth and looks at me, and but I always tell my wife, like, even if I'm working, like, come and get me. And like, I want to be purposeful with like, it's a blessing to be able to work from home when he really enjoys, I try to do bath time as much as I can. We try to brush our teeth together. So I love it. All right, Jake, I'm going to let you go. I know you got a lot to do. Thank you for making the time. And again, we'll definitely do this again soon, man.
Appreciate you, Justin. See you.
Awesome. See ya.
And the beat goes on.